I still remember the way Lauren looked that evening, carefully wrapping a handmade photo album for my mother. She spent 2 months creating it, hoping this would finally be the gift that made my family accept her. 5 years of marriage, and she never stopped trying. My family always had a way of making her feel like an outsider, but she kept showing up with a smile. Their jokes at her expense were just their way of bonding, I told myself. I was wrong. That night, their joke nearly killed her. Before I share what happened, let me know where you are watching from today. Drop your location in the comments below. If stories about choosing love over tradition speak to you, hit that like button and subscribe to join this community. Now, have you ever been forced to choose between your blood relatives and the person you married? Stay with me, because this story changed everything I thought I knew about family. My name is Andy, and I met Lauren 6 years ago at a small coffee shop in Columbus. She was a first-grade teacher with paint stains on her fingers and the warmest smile I had ever seen. That day, she accidentally knocked her iced latte all over my white shirt. She was so embarrassed, apologizing over and over while trying to dab the coffee off with tiny napkins. I just laughed and told her she owed me dinner. 3 weeks later, we had our first official date. A year after that, I asked her to marry me. Lauren taught me what unconditional love felt like. Before her, I never knew relationships could be so peaceful, so simple. She never played games or made me guess what she was thinking. When she said she loved me, I felt it in everything she did. The way she left notes in my lunch bag. The way she remembered every small detail about my day. The way she held my hand during scary movies even though she was more terrified than I was. But there was one thing about Lauren that required constant vigilance. She had a severe peanut allergy diagnosed when she was just 3 years old. Her throat would close up within minutes of exposure. She carried an EpiPen everywhere she went, and I learned how to use it before we even got engaged. Every restaurant visit meant checking ingredients twice. Every grocery trip meant reading labels carefully. It was just part of loving her, and I never minded. My family, on the other hand, was a different story. They had this tradition of playing pranks on each other. My younger sister, Kristen, was the mastermind behind most of them. She thrived on catching people off guard, on making everyone laugh at someone else's expense. When I brought Lauren home for the first time, I hoped they would welcome her with open arms. Instead, Kristen decided to test her. That first dinner, Kristen pretended to be my ex-girlfriend. She kept making comments about our fake history together, touching my arm, laughing at inside jokes that did not exist. Lauren sat there confused and hurt for nearly an hour, before Kristen finally revealed it was all a prank. Everyone laughed. Everyone except Lauren, who forced a smile while I could see the confusion in her eyes. When I confronted Kristen later, she just rolled her eyes and said Lauren needed to loosen up. At our wedding, someone changed the maid of honor is speech. The original toast was sweet and heartfelt, written by Lauren, his best friend. But when she stood up to read it, the papers had been swapped. Instead of celebrating our love, the speech was filled with made-up, embarrassing stories about Lauren, things that never happened, but made her look foolish in front of 200 guests. Lauren, his face turned red. She excused herself to the bathroom and cried. I found out later it was Kristen's doing. When I asked why, she said it was just a wedding prank, that everyone does it, that Lauren was being too sensitive. Last Christmas was perhaps the cruelest. We did a gift exchange, and Lauren spent weeks finding the perfect present for my mother. A beautiful cashmere scarf in her favorite color. When it was Lauren's turn to open her gift from Kristen, she found an empty box. Inside was just a piece of paper that read, "Made you look." Everyone laughed. Kristen laughed the hardest. Lauren smiled and said it was funny, but I saw her hands shaken when she set the box down. Every single time I told Lauren they would come around. I said they just needed more time to get to know her. I believed that deep down, my family loved her because they loved me. I made excuses for them. I minimized her pain. I told her to brush it off, to not take things so personally. Looking back, I was part of the problem. I was so desperate to keep peace with my family that I sacrificed my wife, his dignity, over and over again. The morning of my mother, his birthday party. Lauren was nervous. I could see it in the way she kept checking her reflection, adjusting her dress second, guessing her earrings. She had been working on that photo album for 2 months. It was filled with old family pictures she had collected, restored, and arranged beautifully. She even included handwritten notes beneath each photo sharing memories that various family members had told her over the years. It was a labor of love, her attempt to show my mother that she truly wanted to be part of the family. In the car, she reminded me that she had called my mother the week before to discuss her allergy. She wanted to make sure there would be safe options for her to eat at the party. My mother, his response, had been dismissive. I know you have told me 100 times. Lauren tried not to let it bother her, but I could tell it stung. She had been managing this allergy her entire life. It was not something she enjoyed bringing up repeatedly. When we pulled into my parents' driveway, I noticed Kristen standing by the window. She was looking out at us, and even from the car I could see she was laughing about something with someone inside. A small knot formed in my stomach, but I pushed it away. It is just Kristen being Kristen, I told myself. Nothing to worry about. The house smelled like roasted chicken and fresh bread when we walked in. My mother, Deborah, greeted us at the door with a tight smile. She hugged me warmly, but barely touched Lauren, offering only a brief pat on the shoulder. My father, Richard, was already planted in his recliner watching a football game. He nodded in our direction without getting up. Kristen and her husband Derek were in the kitchen, whispering to each other. When they saw us, they exchanged a look I could not quite read. Kristen's smile was too wide, too eager. Derek just smirked and went back to pouring himself a drink. I felt Lauren tense beside me, so I squeezed her hand and led her to the living room. When Lauren presented the photo album to my mother, I watched her face carefully. Lauren had put her whole heart into that gift. She handed it over with both hands, explaining how she had gathered photos from various relatives, how she had spent hours editing and restoring faded images. My mother flipped through a few pages, nodded, and set it aside on the coffee table. "That is nice, dear," she said, then turned to Kristen to ask about her new kitchen renovation. Lauren's smile faltered, but she recovered quickly. She always did. She found a seat in the corner of the room and tried to join conversations, but every time she spoke, someone would cut her off or change the subject. It was like she was invisible, or worse, like her presence was merely tolerated. Dinner was served around 6. The table was covered with dishes. Roasted chicken garlic, mashed potatoes, green bean casserole, a colorful salad, and fresh rolls. I scanned everything, trying to identify potential problems. Before we sat down, I pulled my mother aside. "Everything is safe for Lauren, right? No peanuts, no peanut oil, nothing like that." My mother looked at me like I had insulted her intelligence. "Everything is safe, Andy. I am not stupid. Do you think I would poison your wife?" I apologized and let it go. I should not have. The meal was awkward but uneventful. Lauren barely ate, picking at her food while my family talked around her. Kristen dominated the conversation, bragging about Derek's promotion and their upcoming vacation to Hawaii. My mother hung on every word. My father occasionally grunted in agreement. Lauren just sat there smiling politely, trying to be present without taking up too much space. Then came dessert. Kristen stood up with theatrical flair, announcing she had made something special. She disappeared into the kitchen and returned carrying a beautiful chocolate cake topped with swirled frosting and chocolate shavings. "I made this especially for you, Lauren," she said, setting the cake down in front of my wife. "I know how much you love chocolate, and I wanted to do something nice for once. Consider it a peace offering." I saw something shift in Lauren's face, hope. After 5 years of cold shoulders and cruel jokes, here was Kristen finally extending an olive branch. Lauren looked at me with tears forming in her eyes. She believed it. She wanted so badly to believe that things were changing. "Kristen, this is so thoughtful," Lauren said. "Thank you so much." Kristen cut a generous slice and placed it on Lauren's plate. Everyone watched as Lauren lifted her fork and took a bite. She closed her eyes and smiled. "This is delicious," she said. "What is your secret?" Kristen glanced at Derek. They both smiled. 90 seconds. That is how long it took. Lauren's hand went to her throat. Her eyes widened. I knew that look. I had seen it once before when a restaurant accidentally put peanut sauce on her dish. "Andy," she whispered, "something is wrong." I jumped up from my chair. "What is in the cake, Kristen?" My sister laughed. "Oh, relax. It is just a little peanut butter. It is not going to kill anyone." She wanted to see how committed Lauren was to this whole allergy thing. She thought Lauren was exaggerating for attention. Time stopped. Then everything happened at once. Lauren's lips began to swell. Her face turned red, then started shifting toward a terrifying shade of blue. She could not breathe. Her hands clawed at her throat as she gasped for air that would not come. She knocked over her chair, trying to stand, then collapsed against the table. I screamed for someone to call 911. I ran to Lauren, his purse dumping everything onto the floor, searching frantically for her EpiPen. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely grip anything. Behind me, I heard Kristen's voice. "Oh, come on. She's being dramatic." Derek laughed. "Yeah, she just wants attention." Classic Lauren. I found the EpiPen. I tore off the cap and jabbed it into Lauren's thigh, right through her dress, just like I had practiced. Her body jerked. She was still not breathing normally. I looked at my mother, expecting her to be on the phone with emergency services, expecting her to be doing something, anything. She was just standing there, arms crossed, watching. "She will be fine," my mother said. "Stop overreacting, Andy. You are making a scene." My father had not even gotten up from his seat. He sat there with his napkin still tucked into his collar, watching his daughter-in-law suffocate like it was just another inconvenience interrupting his evening. I held Lauren in my arms, rocking her, begging her to keep breathing. Her eyes were rolling back. Her skin was turning blue. I could hear the air struggling to pass through her swollen throat. I called 911 myself, sobbing into the phone as I described what was happening. The dispatcher kept me calm, told me the ambulance was on the way, told me to keep her still and monitor her breathing. The EpiPen had bought us time, but she needed more help than I could give. The whole time, nobody in my family moved to help. Kristen had finally stopped laughing, but she was not apologizing either. She just stood there, watching like she was waiting for Lauren to stop faking it. When the paramedics arrived, they rushed Lauren onto a stretcher. Her breathing was shallow but present. The EpiPen had done its job, but barely. One of the paramedics looked at me and said, "You saved her life." A few more minutes, and it would have been too late. I rode in the ambulance holding Lauren, his hand watching the machines beep and flash around her. I did not look back at the house. I did not say goodbye to my family. I could not. The hospital was cold and bright. They took Lauren into the emergency room immediately while I was directed to a waiting area. I sat there for 3 hours, unable to think, unable to process what had just happened. My wife almost died. My sister poisoned her. My family watched and laughed. When the doctor finally came out, she explained that Lauren had experienced severe anaphylactic shock. Her airway had nearly closed completely. If I had not administered the EpiPen when I did, if I had hesitated even another minute, she would not have survived. They were keeping her overnight for observation, pumping her full of steroids and antihistamines to prevent a secondary reaction. I sat by Lauren's bed all night, watching her breathe through an oxygen mask. Her face was still swollen, her skin pale against the white hospital sheets. Every few minutes I would reach over and touch her hand just to make sure she was still warm, still alive. Around midnight, my phone buzzed. A text from Kristen. "Hope she is okay, LOL. Tell her sorry, it was just a prank, bro." I stared at that message for a long time. LOL. She put LOL at the end. My wife almost died, and my sister thought it was funny enough to add LOL. Then another message, this time from my mother. "Your sister feels bad. Do not make this bigger than it needs to be. Family is family, Andy. We love you." I turned off my phone and threw it in my bag. I could not look at it anymore. When Lauren woke up the next morning, the first thing she did was apologize. "Did I ruin your mom? His birthday?" she asked, her voice hoarse and weak. I broke down. I sat on the edge of her hospital bed and cried like I had not cried since I was a child. Here was my wife lying in a hospital bed after nearly dying, and she was worried about my mother's birthday. She was worried about causing trouble. She was worried about being a burden. Lauren told me she remembered everything. She remembered the cake, the sudden fire in her throat, the inability to breathe. She remembered falling, remembered me screaming for help. But mostly, she remembered the laughter. Even as she was suffocating, she could hear them laughing. She thought she was dying, and the last sound she heard was my family thinking it was hilarious. "I have tried so hard for 5 years, Andy," she said, tears streaming down her swollen face. "I have done everything I can think of to make them like me. But I cannot do this anymore. I just cannot." I held her hand and looked into her eyes. I saw 5 years of exhaustion, 5 years of being the bigger person, 5 years of smiling through humiliation, of making excuses for people who never once made an excuse for her. I saw the woman I loved more than anything, broken and tired, and finally admitting she had reached her limit. And I made a decision, the easiest and hardest decision of my life. 1 week later, after Lauren was released from the hospital, I drove to my parents' house alone. I did not tell Lauren where I was going. I did not want her to worry or try to talk me out of it. When I walked through the door, my whole family was there. It was like they had been expecting me, waiting for me to come crawling back and smooth things over like I always did. My mother spoke first, her voice dripping with rehearsed sympathy. "I am glad you came, Andy. This whole thing has been blown way out of proportion. We can talk about it like adults and move past it." Kristen chimed in, rolling her eyes. Yeah, Lauren needs to learn to take a joke. She's always been way too sensitive. I said I was sorry. What more does she want? I did not respond immediately. Instead, I walked to the dining room table and set down a folder I had been carrying. Inside were copies of Lauren's medical records from that night, the emergency room report, the doctor's statement about how close she came to dying, the itemized hospital bill totaling over $12,000, and a letter from my lawyer outlining the potential criminal charges for intentionally exposing someone to a known allergen. Everyone stared at the papers. Nobody spoke. I looked at Kristen first. What you did was not a prank. It was assault. You knew about her allergy. She called Mom specifically to remind everyone about her allergy. You put peanut butter in that cake on purpose, knowing what it would do to her. That is not a joke. That is attempted murder. Kristen's face went pale. I did not think. You never think I said. That is the problem. You have spent your entire life doing whatever you want and expecting everyone else to clean up your mess. Well, I am done cleaning. I turned to my mother. And you. You stood there and watched your daughter-in-law suffocate. You did not call for help. You did not try to stop it. You told me I was overreacting while my wife was turning blue. What kind of mother does that? My mother started crying. Andy, that is not fair. You know I love you. Family has to stick together. You cannot throw away your whole family over one mistake. One mistake, I almost laughed. This is not one mistake. This is 5 years of mistakes. 5 years of making Lauren feel like she does not belong. 5 years of cruel jokes and cold shoulders and treating her like an outsider. And then you almost let her die, and you're calling it a mistake. My father finally spoke up. Now, son, let us all calm down. Your mother is right. Family is important. You do not want to do something you will regret. I looked at my father. Really looked at him for the first time in years. You sat in your chair while my wife could not breathe. You did not even stand up. You did not even look concerned. You just sat there like it was an inconvenience interrupting your dinner. You do not get to lecture me about family. I picked up the folder and tucked it back under my arm. I came here to tell you something, not to ask for permission. I am done. I am done with all of you. Lauren is my family now. She's been my family since the day I married her, and you stopped being my family the moment you laughed while she was dying. My mother reached for me. Andy, please, you cannot do this. I am your mother. I stepped back from her hand. And Lauren is my wife. She almost died and none of you cared. I'm not asking you to understand. I'm telling you how it is going to be from now on. I walked toward the door. Kristen shouted after me. You're going to regret this, Andy. You will come crawling back. You will see. I stopped with my hand on the doorknob. I turned around one last time. The only thing I regret is not doing this 5 years ago. The only thing I regret is every time I told Lauren to brush off your cruelty, every time I made excuses for you, every time I put your feelings above her safety. That is what I regret. This is the first thing I have done right in a long time. I walked out and closed the door behind me. I did not look back. The first few weeks were harder than I expected. I kept reaching for my phone to call my mom out of habit more than anything else. 20 years of Sunday dinners and birthday calls do not just disappear overnight. Sometimes I would dial her number and stare at the screen before putting the phone away. My mother sent messages daily. They cycled through every emotion. First came the apologies, tearful voicemails about how sorry she was, how she never meant for things to go so far. Then came the anger, accusing me of abandoning my family, of choosing a stranger over blood. Then came the guilt trips, reminders of everything she had done for me growing up, every sacrifice she had made. I stopped listening after the first week. Kristen took a different approach. She went to social media posting vague statuses about betrayal and loyalty, about how some people forget where they came from. Mutual friends reached out asking what happened. Some relatives called to tell me I was being too harsh, that I needed to forgive and forget that holding grudges only hurts yourself. I listened to all of it, and then I let it go. Lauren and I started seeing a counselor together, not because our marriage was in trouble, but because we both had wounds that needed attention. She needed to process 5 years of feeling unwelcome in my family. I needed to process the guilt of letting it happen for so long. We sat in that small office every Thursday evening, learning to say the things we had been too afraid to say. Lauren told me about times I never knew about. Moments when my mother made comments about her cooking her job, her clothes. Times when Kristen would corner her at family events and whisper little cruelties that she never reported to me because she did not want to cause problems. All those years, she was protecting me from knowing how bad it really was. She was protecting me, even though I was supposed to be protecting her. I apologized to her so many times, not because she asked for it, but because she deserved it. I should have seen it sooner. I should have stood up sooner. I spent so many years trying to keep peace with my family that I made war with my wife, his dignity. That was my failure, and I owned it. Slowly, things got better. Lauren started smiling more. She stopped flinching whenever my phone rang. She began talking about the future without that shadow of anxiety that used to follow her everywhere. We started building new traditions, just the two of us. Saturday morning pancakes, Wednesday evening walks around the neighborhood, monthly movie nights where we watched terrible films and laughed until we cried. We found family in unexpected places. My coworker Marcus and his wife became our closest friends. Our neighbor, an elderly woman named Patricia, started inviting us over for Sunday dinner. Lauren, his colleagues from school, threw her a surprise party for her birthday, something my family had never once done in 5 years. A year after that terrible night, Lauren told me she was pregnant. We were going to have a baby. I held her while she cried happy tears, and I made a silent promise to myself. My child would never grow up in a family where cruelty was disguised as humor. My child would never learn that love comes with conditions. My child would know what it means to be protected unconditionally and completely. I think about my family sometimes, not with anger anymore. The rage burned itself out months ago. Now there is just a quiet sadness, a grief for what could have been if they had chosen differently. I do not hate them. Hate takes too much energy. I just accept that they are who they are, and who they are is not safe for the people I love. Maybe, someday, things will change. Maybe my mother will realize that her silence that night was louder than any apology could fix. Maybe Kristen will grow up and understand that words and actions have consequences that sorry cannot erase. Maybe my father will find his voice and stand up for something that matters. Maybe. But I'm not waiting around for maybes anymore. I learned something important through all of this. Family is not just about blood. Family is about who shows up when you need them. Family is about who protects you, not who harms you. Family is the people who choose to love you well, not the people who happen to share your DNA. Lauren and I built our own family. It is small, but it is safe, it is warm, it is ours, and every single person in it knows that they are loved, without conditions, without tests, without cruel jokes disguised as bonding. Sometimes, protecting the people you love means walking away from the people you were born to. And that is okay. That is more than okay. That is the bravest thing you can ever do. Now, I want to hear from you. Have you ever had to choose between family loyalty and protecting someone you love? How did you handle it? Share your story in the comments below. If this story touched you, please hit that like button and subscribe to this channel for more real-life stories. Share this video with someone who might need to hear it today. Thank you for being here, for listening, and for being part of this community. May you always have the courage to protect the people who matter most. May you always choose love over obligation. And may your family, whoever they are, be the kind of family you actually deserve.